There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Earthlings Chat. I'm Zube, and I'm here chatting with my friend Melanie. Uh, my whole concept of doing this is to talk about spirituality and like I can talk. But things that like I can be an eavesdropper. I learn a lot, and sometimes I don't want people to see me learning, right? If that makes any sense. So I love YouTube and stuff like that. Usually these are the subject kind of emerges as we talk, but Melanie and I have something that we really wanted to share because we thought it would be helpful to people. So anyway, we are going to talk about the fact that we both have children. I have two, she has a son, and we do not have them. I don't like the word custody, but we don't parent them day to day. So anyway, we were going to talk about that, and I'll let Melanie introduce herself.
Hey guys, I'm Melanie. I have been friends with Zube over the last 3 years in our recovery journey together, and we always end up having some really good conversations. And like she said, we were talking the other day, and it's funny, as much as we talk about everything, our children is something that we don't talk about as much. And what we kind of arrived to the other day was that, it's not a subject that we broach often because either people don't understand or there's a lot of shame around it. And we thought it would be a useful conversation to put out there for people who may be struggling with the same thing or may have a better understanding of it. And so that's what our purpose is here today. Mm-hmm. And we hope that you enjoy or get something out of it.
Yes. I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous. It's a vulnerable topic to share. Yes. And in my case, I'm just gonna, we both have to be very mindful that someday like our children might find this, you know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, so this is probably, it's totally not scripted, but it is a conversation that is more geared towards, we know people are overhearing it, and we care about that. Anyway, so I think I kind of want to pull a card to start it off, just to see, we both I meditated and prayed, and Melanie did as well before this. So actually, I'm going to pull one of these guys. They're the funny ones, because that's how we do.
I like it.
We do the funny. And I think, I think probably what would be best is for maybe each of us to give a little description about our individual situations.
Absolutely. I like it.
For a little backstory.
I'll wait for the card, and then if you want,
yeah.
I can. However,
I really need to. We got peacefulness.
And I love it.
I have a peaceful, tranquil, and untroubled heart. This is where I choose to spend my time. I can bring guests, but any person, thought, or event that brings drama or chaos is not invited. My heart is a special property, and I'm going to keep it that way so we can all keep enjoying it, and I can get my security deposit back. How fucking perfect.
Right? I know.
There we go. Okay. Who wants to go first?
I'll go ahead and start. I'll just do a brief background. I off and on throughout my life have struggled with addiction. I met you at the very beginning of the last 3-year journey into recovery, and it's been a beautiful experience. I will say what started my troubles this last time had to do with being in a less than nurturing relationship with someone whom I had a child with. And due to some of the troubles that we had, I lost my son. And I ended up signing adoption papers for him when he was about 6 months old, because I knew that it was the most loving thing that I could do at that time. And that kind of started me off on a really slippery slope. And I lost everything. And I've kind of been I don't want to say crawling my way out of that for the last 3 years, because it's been not that hard, as hard as that sounds. But, you know, in that process, I have had to learn how to, and I'm still not there, how to be a mom to a son who I don't raise. And that's kind of created in and of itself many lessons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
recovery is possible, you know, no matter what. And I think that, you know, I can speak for both of us, maybe, when I say that our story is a testament to that, you know.
Absolutely. And you do, just so that they know, you do have an open adoption. So
Yes, I do. I get to FaceTime with him, and he does live in Arizona, which is only about 5.5 hours away. So when his adoptive parents have parents themselves who are immunocompromised, so they're very careful with the COVID thing. And so seeing him in person hasn't really been an option. I mean, I suppose I could go down there and see him, but you know, everybody's very careful with it right now. So we've been FaceTiming. One of the hardest things for me, I think, is adjusting to, you know, trying to find a place in me that knows that, yes, this is my son. However, I don't have any say in what happens in his life and how he's raised and what, you know, so that's kind of an adjustment that I'm still trying to make, if that makes sense. It's not an easy topic for me. You know, I tend to feel I'm feeling very vulnerable right now, because it's something that people have and do judge me for. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we're talking about it.
I am too. My backstory is different, but the same, you know. I shared 50-50 custody of my kids until they were 8 and 10. In 2017, I realized that my drinking, I couldn't control it. I was also really struggling with, I'd been diagnosed with generalized anxiety and clinical depression. And I was self-medicating. And then I was also diagnosed with PTSD. The details don't necessarily matter, but I had asked my kid's dad to take them while I got better. And I knew that I knew it would be a struggle to reconnect with them, because just the way that things had been already. So I went to Mississippi and I got sober and I met Melanie. And then the kids' dad had requested to move to Texas. I had lived in Colorado. And when he requested to move to Texas, it was a temporary order that he had 100% parenting time with the kids. And so I had 4 visitations I could do. When they wanted to move to Texas, I didn't have a lawyer, and I still don't. I allowed it because in my mind, even though I intended to move back to Colorado, it was at like 11 months sober that I found out. And I was like, well, if I move back to Colorado and I represent myself, what if it doesn't work out and then I got to move somewhere else, so I wrote a response to the court and I said that would be fine, that I would move to Texas instead of moving back to Colorado. It would just take me more time to be able to do that because I didn't know anybody in Texas. Anyway, I moved to Texas. I have filed two things with the court. One that I felt parenting, our parenting agreement was not being followed, like, to the T. And the judge responded actually right before I just moved to Texas, because I was kind of like losing touch with what was going on with the kids. So by the time the judge responded a few months later that I had filed it incorrectly and that I needed to refile it. And at that point, months had passed, and I had already moved to Texas, which was a miracle. Yeah. And then recently when COVID went down, I filed something else, and I've not received a response to that. And it's almost been a year. So I've spoken to a few lawyers, and it's a weird situation because it's across, we live in a new state, but jurisdiction is still in Colorado. Anyway, I can't afford a lawyer. And so, and I'm obviously a terrible lawyer. I actually, when I was in high school, I was in some of the gifted, like, programs or whatever they call them in high school. And one time, one of the kids called out of mock trial. Have you ever heard of mock trial?
Uh-uh.
So it's
No.
like when high school kids go to an actual courtroom in front of a judge, and you have like a fake case, and you have to present it and all that. And I remember the teacher made me be a lawyer. Okay. And I did not want to, like, I really didn't want to go, but I had to, because my teacher told me to do it. And I remember the judge was such an asshole to me. He was like, I was stuttering. I was really fucking nervous. And he was like, that was a terrible presentation. I'm probably exaggerating because I was like
Wow.
a teenager, but he did say, I don't even know why you're here doing this. And I started crying. I didn't want to be there doing that, but like my school couldn't have participated if I didn't go. So anyway, that's the funny story I tell myself when I feel bad about being a bad lawyer. I'm like, yes, I'm a shitty lawyer. I even try, I
I
was
even
told that in
tried it
high
once.
school by a mean ass judge who should have been like, oh, good try. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right,
I
right.
can see how nervous you are. It took some balls to get up there and actually like follow through with it. But at any rate, I have decided that I need to be happy with what is, right? Because it is what is. And
Yeah.
I do everything I can. I mail my kids letters, I send them texts, and but it's painful. It's a painful journey. So
Oh, yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah.
thank you.
It's, yeah. No, I mean, it really is. I mean, our situations are different, but they're the same. That's kind of how it is. Like when I've noticed that with people who are like-minded, who are on the same path, even if the details of the story is different, the feelings are the same, you know? And I know for me, I have been able to, over the last few years, find a place of deep gratitude that he is with people who really care about him and who allow me to be known in his life as his biological mother. So, in a lot of ways, I am blessed beyond what I deserve, if that makes sense. And I don't mean to sound like self loathing or anything when I say that. It's just staying right sized,
Yeah.
for me, because, our situation, that is one difference in our situation. And I've got to say, going back to your story, that I have watched you over the last few years never give up, like ever, and diligently fight for your children, and just to be there with them, and the amount of times that you can, in the times that you can, you always, I'm sure that your children will grow up knowing that it was never a lack of love or a lack of desire or a lack of, because you have been an example to me of what motherhood looks like, really, really just sacrificing for your kids. I mean, when you left for Texas
Oh
and
my
you didn't
God.
even Oh my gosh. I mean, I remember talking to you when you were in the infancy part of planning it, and you hadn't found a job yet. And you're like, I'm just going to go out there and pitch a tent and find a job. Like, I just want to go. I need to go. I need to be with my kids. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this right here is a mother's love.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And then things aligned and you got a job and you had a place to stay, and it wasn't ideal.
Oh my gosh, that job. Oh yeah. I mean, I wanted to give up so many times. I remember my mom, when I told her, she was like, well, what are you gonna do out there? And I was like, I don't know. I'll live in my car, mom. Like I lived in my car when I was drinking, for a few weeks. Like I can sure do it sober. And I there was like this pause. she,
He's like,
and she said, okay. I mean, she knew there was no talking me out of it. I mean, yeah, because I was struggling to get in touch with the kids, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, I have access to them through school. So if I live in the same community, then I can, participate in their school activities and see them at like school functions and stuff. So yeah, it was just, I'm doing the thing.
going. I'm
Yeah,
going and
yeah,
having faith in your higher power that it was all going to work out. And it did. I
it
mean,
did.
that first job was a little bit, less than ideal. Like I said, you can't by any stretch of the imagination, but it kind of helped you plant roots there,
It did.
and now, I mean, you are still, from what I can see, struggling with finding that level of acceptance and peace with how much you're allowed to see your children. I know how hard that is for you. I have listened to you over the years talk about that. But you never give up. I mean, you're maintaining another residence in Texas as we speak, just so that your kids, when you do get to see them, have a place to go that is their own.
Yeah.
And that's really, I've got to tell you, like your Sacrifice and what you've done and how you've handled this situation is remarkable. There's nothing short of that. And I'm super proud of you, like in how you deal with it.
Okay. And not just to be tit for tat. So, I have chills right now because I am so grateful. Like, even when we're not talking about this, I always feel like you and I have this understanding, that, we have these like maternal feelings, and that does something to your heart, um, that we don't get to put where they feel like they should go, so we have to redirect them. And even though we don't talk about it, I feel so connected to you because we share that soft spot.
Yeah. Yes.
And you listen to me with such compassion, and sometimes I'm honestly at a loss for words because you gave a baby up for adoption. You know what I mean? And I just sometimes I think, oh my God, Zuby, like shut up. Think about what Melanie is experiencing. You know what I mean? And anyway, I know both of us would say, because that's the kind of people that we are, but we get it. It doesn't matter exactly like what the details are or what the situation looks like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in some ways, Zuby, um, I know that there have been times where, especially early on, you would say things to me like, I always feel bad when I'm talking about this because of what you had to deal with. But the reality of it is I almost in my mind feel like what you've dealt with is more difficult because you had those years with them where you were full-time hands-on. My son, I've never had that. And so I don't know what I'm missing. Does that make sense? It's not that I don't miss him. And oh my gosh, just the other night I was saying to Chris, like, oh my gosh, my life would be so different if he were here. Like everything would be about him, and I would just be like spending all this time, like teaching him things and hanging out, and, you know, and of course that's the idealized version of parenthood. There
I
would
know,
be other
right?
times where I'd be like, I'm, you know, go in the corner and, you know, whatever. But, I think there are differences in that I have to learn how to, where the sweet spot is, like how much involvement is good and how
Mhm.
much would be overreach. Does that make sense? Because he does have a family, you
Yeah.
know. So that's really where my lesson is. And the one thing that I want him to grow up knowing is that I did not give him up because I didn't love him.
Mhm.
You know, I gave him up because I loved him. And I knew that I was in a situation that was going to be incredibly bad for him.
Mhm.
So that's really what I want. And so right now, I don't want his adopted mom, who has been so gracious with me, to feel threatened is too deep of a word. It's too harsh, but that's the only thing that's coming to mind, by my presence because of my biological tie to him. So, to keep everybody's feelings in mind, I want to find the sweet spot where Xavier will grow up knowing how much I love him, but he will also know that his mom is, you know, Jennifer is his mom and she's raised him and she deserves to be honored in that way, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And you know, it's good for me to hear that. There is a sense that I'm not grateful, you know. Um, oh no, not from you.
Oh,
Yeah. Um, for the kids being cared for, you know, by their dad and his girlfriend, and I am I'm extremely grateful. You know what I mean? I asked him to take them, you know what I mean? And so what I've found difficult, it's like there's two things that I wrestle with, because sometimes I'm just struggling so much, and I'm like, you know what? Like I could just let it go. You know, I see those let it go memes, and I'm like, I could just let it go and go to counseling and like heal myself. But then I imagine my kids in their 20s or going like, well, why did mom get sober and still not want us? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And so there's this like having to continually put my hand in the fire, um you know, because I imagine the crushing like disappointment that I would feel if like my mom didn't try or my dad didn't try, you know what I mean? And everybody has traumas, you know. I'm just trying to do the right thing. um and I'm not saying it would be easy to like let it go. I mean, I'm talking it would be like years of healing and therapy, but it's like this continual process of staying raw. I mean, it's like having your heart wide open and with like fully exposed, you know, and you can never, but if I were to cover it up, it would be covered in scar tissue. And I, you know what I mean? That just came to me. And you know, this is like sad right now, but I have finally managed. I would say it was about 2 years, and I was on the phone with my mom, and I was like, Mom, I just want to feel joy. Every time I feel joy, it's immediately turned into guilt. Like, how could I be happy without my kids? And that's kind of where the expectations of, you know, society, the expectations of me, um you know, sorry, I'm getting emotional.
Okay.
The moon is in Cancer.
Hey.
um but you know, but in the past year, So when COVID happened, it was like, boom, you cannot see your kids at school. You can't, like I really was only limited to those 4 visitations per year. And so I was down in Texas and my boyfriend is in Colorado. And I was like, I was just like, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? It was like a crisis of, like existential proportions. Like, why am I here 15 minutes from where my kids sleep? And I'm by myself, like alone,
You can't see them.
anyway. So
Yeah.
it was interesting because then I filed something with the court and I was like, you know what? And then this is going to lead to kind of where I want to go with this conversation. I filed something with the court and I was like, that's it. Like, that felt like the universe being like, girl, we have something else we want you to do. You know what I mean? And so it kind of like, I finally went, okay. I mean, um, and then there are times when people are like, hi, Issa. Um, well, you need to like call the court every day. And how come they haven't responded to you? And you just need to harass them. And anytime I hear you need to, I'm like, no, I just shut down.
Yeah.
I'm like, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. No, it's not that. That is such a deeply personal situation. It's not really something that anybody can give advice on, in my humble opinion.
I,
You know, that's, I wouldn't want somebody to tell me what I need to be doing. You know what I mean? Because it's different for each of us. And like I said earlier, you have been remarkable in your tenacity in all of this. And your love is so obvious from the outside looking in. Your love for your children is so obvious that I don't really feel like there's anything different that you need to be doing. This is possibly one of the biggest lessons for both of us, in
yeah.
life, and she's destroying a pillow. and it's
Nice.
and it's like she's spraying the stuffing all over me. But no, I hear you. You don't. I'm sorry that people do that, because I feel like that's definitely an overreach.
Yeah. Well, I understand it comes from a place of,
Go.
okay, but I think there's a tendency to think like that couldn't happen. You know what I mean? Like something like this couldn't happen. Where you have a loving parent who wants to be involved and can't. And so it's where we get that black and white file in our head. And this could be just, I had that file in my head. You know what I mean? I really did think like, okay, I need to get help. Like I clearly have something going on, mentally and with the alcohol. I need to get better. And the right thing to do is to get help. There's a part of me sometimes that wonders, like, could I have muddled through? You know what I mean? Like gotten through it, because I didn't realize, I thought at the time, I know it'll be hard, but I did not think it would be move to another state and have to like beg and plead. I didn't think it would be that level of hard, but people want, their heart is in the right place.
Yeah,
Like
I
they
was
they,
thinking.
they want to fix it. I get that, but it implies to me that I don't. You know what I mean? That I'm not trying to fix it. That I'm just like, oh well, I filed this thing. Too bad, so sad. No,
Yeah,
I need to keep this okay, um, and I need to make sure that I am a functioning person in society and that I don't overwhelm myself with trying to be a shitty lawyer. And it's a lot of work for me to be a shitty lawyer. I mean, it takes me forever to write motions because I'm a writer and that's a problem. You know what I mean? Because you can't like, the judge will tell if you're just trying to, not
love.
just be, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
and that's a struggle for me.
I hear you.
But
I'm the same. I'm a creative writer too. And
yeah,
yeah, Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. I mean, so, okay, so asking about you, so do you share, who do you share your story with?
I mean, I've talked with you about it. I talk with Sharon, Miss Sharon, about it. Obviously my husband, my family who already knows. I did tell some of Chris's family early on that I have a son who's adopted. Um, so I really only share it when I feel like I have to. It's not, like it's one of those things where I was talking to my brother and my mom about this the other day. Like, I just don't, it's not a comfortable subject for me,
No.
and I've actually been out in the wild, where people have asked me questions like, oh, do you have kids? And that should be an easy answer, right? Yes or no. And I feel like a deer in headlights because I'm like, well, yes, but no. I'm not raising him. He is my son, but yeah, so I have one. And then it's like, if I decide to tell them that I do have a son, I had my dental hygienist asked me the other day, or a couple months ago, what's your son's name? And it was like deer in the headlights because I had named him Parker, and his adoptive parents changed his name to Xavier. So again, a question that should be simple is not simple for me.
It's complicated.
Yes. So, and I know she sensed like my hesitation because I was like, oh, so I just said Xavier because that's his name, But those are the kind of questions that shouldn't be difficult for me to answer. And I'm hoping that by starting to do these kind of things, being more open about it, that I will feel less intimidated or less shameful or less vulnerable or whatever, because I have to say that losing my son is by far the most shameful thing for me. It is the one where I can really be hard on myself. I can really just, why couldn't you get your shit together?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so talking about it is really, it's hard for me because I know that I am directly responsible for that, and there's nothing I can do about it. I can't change it. I can't make it better. I can't. And, I lost friendships of years over that. I did. And, but it's like I said, it's, my hope is that by being open and vulnerable about it, somebody out there who maybe feels the same way I do can not feel alone.
Yeah.
And that, just because I have made bad decisions and my behavior has been less than becoming over the years, that doesn't make me less human or have any less right to be involved in my son's life or any of those things.
Or do you ever, because I do you ever struggle with, am I a really loving person?
Yeah.
I'm saying because I do, like, I think I'm loving. I feel like I'm loving, but I would be like, but how could I have let that happen? In my case, that I got so out of hand that I couldn't get well. And I did try. But even if so, like, I never had CPS or never had anything like that. Sometimes I wish I did, because then you get assigned a lawyer, you know what I mean? And there are, like, but in family court, you just don't get a lawyer. That, you have, it's anyway. But oh, I felt a little resentment there. Ugh, it's always a learning. I mean, I always turn it back inside, and it's like, it is what it is. But family court is a whole different subject.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's quite the moneymaker. But anyway, yeah, that got me totally off. What was I saying?
You were talking about if you wonder if you're a loving person.
If I'm loving, right. And I'm like, well, maybe somebody who, but I know that I know
You
that I
are.
am, but that's where the inner work comes. Most people don't have to question themselves about whether they really know what love is. You know what I mean? And so um that's an area that I've used to grow. Um and I used to gauge myself by what other people thought of me, and I still do to a degree, because like you were saying, the question, do you have kids? That's a hard one for me too. You know what I mean? Like, oh, where are they? Well, they're with they're with their dad in Texas, and I kind of fluff around it and I go, yeah, he got a better job, because now I'm in Colorado most of the time. And so he wanted to move to Texas, and so I moved down there too, and now I just go back and forth. And then they go, oh, well, how often do you see him? And I'm like, sometimes if I don't think I'm going to see somebody again, I just full on lie. I mean, I always say yes, and then I just like skirt around any other questions. You know what I mean? Or I'll even make shit up if I'm not going to see you again. And then I have run into situations where like the relationship is like continued, and I'm like, okay, so now that you really know me, like here's what's going on. It's just a converse, and it's like every time. So I would understand why you would. It's a hard question.
Right, and it shouldn't be a hard question. And
No,
I don't fault people for having natural curiosities. If I do say
right,
they want to know, like, how old is he, where is he, et cetera, et cetera. That's a natural curiosity. So it's not really a problem with them. It's me. It's like, how do I really want to get into this with my dental hygienist? Probably not. Like, you know what I mean?
right,
Yeah,
right.
it's,
But then it's that shame, and that's why we don't share, because
mhm.
maybe if like we were more open about it, um like, yeah, I have kids, they're in Texas, I lost them, and because I'm 3 years sober, you know what I mean? But there's the part of me that wants to be like, but but I'm not a bad person, but I'm not a bad person. Oh my God, that's what
Yes.
it is.
Yeah, I don't want people to be critical of what happened in my life, because I'm still critical of it.
Yes,
That's what it is. So I'm it's transference of the highest magnitude. And even if they did judge me, you
right.
know, so what? Like, and that's what I want to get to. I want to get to a place of self love and self compassion, and reminding myself that he is in a good place.
Yeah.
And that one of the things that I could do, as a mom, was make sure that he got what he needed. um and I really want to be able to internalize that and feel okay with it, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
you know and I think that I just realized that. Like, it's funny, you and I have talked about this stuff off and on over the last few years, but not to this extent. And it's like, oh my gosh, I just fully realized, like, I have not forgiven myself for this yet, and I judge myself, and I'm critical, and that kind of, yeah, wow.
I mean, I kind of think that's what, that's part of what this is about, right? So even if it's not, you don't have your kids, or, like, take a whole nother situation. It's like shame is just a terrible, I mean, it's not useful. Like guilt is
It's
useful, because you're like, okay, like I maybe shouldn't do that again. But shame is like, I suck, right?
right.
I think I've told you about him before. Gabor Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate. He
Mm-mm.
does a
Well,
lot of stuff on
you may have told me about it, but
yeah.
I don't remember. That name's not ringing a bell. But
I don't know if you look him up. I just think he's really cool. He has a lot of cool stuff on addiction and stuff like that. But he was doing this talk one time, and I can't find it again because it was some like banquet dinner, you know, like YouTube, you can just find like hundreds of things on people. And but he was saying, he was like, okay, he's like, everything, literally everything is about you, right? He's like, if I walked into a room and I walked up to you and said, you're an orange bush, he's like, you would laugh at me, you wouldn't care, right? But and then I can't remember exactly what he said, but when I go through and I fill in the blanks, um bad mother, oh, you know, it's all about you. Whether you find, like, even if I know you really well and I call you an orange bush, you're not going to care. You know what
Because
I
I
mean?
know
If I'm
I'm not.
really mad at you and you're a fucking orange bush, what? You know, or like, I don't know, you're a bad singer. Yeah, so what? Like, I don't hold any, I don't care, you know.
Doesn't
Um,
matter to you. There isn't weight to it because it's not this maladaptive idea about yourself that you have. Yeah. I know I'm not an orange bush, so you can call me an orange bush all day long. But if you come to me and you say, you know, you didn't care enough about your son, that's going to ring a chord in me that even if it's not true, I still I feel that way sometimes about myself, you know. So that's really a great example of
yeah,
everything is about what I believe about myself. I mean, and I can apply that to anything, even in my marriage, like when we have fights and stuff, and I have these ideas about myself that are, you know, like, and but they're my ideas about myself, and I put it on him, like, you think these things about me, and he's like, what? No.
projection.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy. And it's one of those things that, like, I don't know that I'll ever be done growing when it comes to that. But yeah, I mean, we just hit on something that I needed. So I'm so glad that we did this, because now I know what the problem is, why it's hard for me, why, you know, I don't like to be open about it. Why, you know, because I have ideas about myself in there that I need to work on.
yeah,
And I think the biggest focus for me, at least, is making sure that my son knows that I love him and that it was
yeah.
never that.
And yes, I think, okay, ready. So a couple things like that. That's the point of me wanting to do this, because even if it's not like, um, by being able to be the fly on a wall in a conversation, like, this is a tough subject, but it's about learning about ourselves, right? Turning it inwards, because we are really the only people that we can change, you know. Also, I think the element that makes it a real challenge for me is that there is a person who is not an adult that is affected by what's going on. Do you know what I mean? Um, because it's a lot easier to, for me, when I'm doing the spiritual journey thing, it's a lot easier for me to say, well, you know what, that's on them, this is on me. But when my actions and my spiritual growth are influencing people who are young, I feel kind of a struggle with that. Like, you touched on it, like, how much do I reach out? How much do I, you know, because I struggle with that a little bit too. I realized it's important for my kids to know that I'm happy. You know what I mean? I finally realized that, because I don't want them living a good life. You know, they do live a good life. Um, Wondering, like, is mom okay? Or I don't want them in any way feeling responsible for my sorrow. I don't want anybody to feel responsible for my sorrow. It just is what it is, right? It's you know, um, so, but there is an element of, I don't want them to think I don't care, and I don't want to interfere with like their good life. You know what I mean? So I, you know, and
It's
that's probably just going to be a tightrope that I walk until they're older, you know, and there's just
that's
more
kind
honesty that you can have as adults. Like,
Yes. Well, and there's more understanding, and there's, you know, yeah, I mean, and that's kind of where I'm at. It's like I know that the nature of my relationship with my son is going to change as he grows into an adult, because he'll have questions for me. I fully anticipate that. I fully anticipate there may be some anger, some hurt feelings, um, and I'm prepared for it. And I think part
Same.
of my job as a mom to him is to be okay with sitting and listening to that,
Yeah.
no matter how much it strikes a chord with me, like, because it's going to touch on my shame center around it. I know it will.
Yeah.
But his feelings need to always be the most important feelings in the room,
Yeah.
because my job as his mother is to make sure that that's how it goes.
Yeah. I told my mom, I'm like, it is my job to be a sanctuary. It is my job to be resilient. It is my job to be in control over my emotions, and to be able to, when the time comes. I remember Miss Sharon, I told her one time, I was like, Miss Sharon, I've told the kids, like, they can be mad at me, they can tell me like anything they want to tell me, they can yell at me, they can, and I said, but they don't want to. And she was like, girl, leave them alone. And she was like, they're just not there yet, and so don't push it. And she's like, just wait until they're older. And I'm prepared for it, I mean, I'm prepared for that anger. I almost wanted it sooner, which now I realize is kind of selfish, because in some way, I guess I probably wanted to get it over with. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
now I'm like, I'm okay waiting for that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll happen in just the right time, you know. It'll happen in just the right time. And the main thing, which I see you doing in spades, and I am still learning to do, is to ensure that my presence is always going to be something that he looks back on and he goes, yep, she was always there in
Yeah.
one form or another.
Yes.
She always remembered my birthday. She always remembered Christmas. She FaceTimed with me, even, gosh, and he's, a boy and he's 7. Yeah. So like, I actually feel guilty because I'm like making him sit on the phone with me for 10 minutes. He's like,
right. Play with my toys. Right.
Right. Like,
yeah.
I want to be with the other kids playing. Like, why am I having to talk to you? And I don't take it personally. I'm just like, and I don't try to like drag it out either. I'm like, all right, man, we talked. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
But it's important that he always knows, so that when that day comes, he feels comfortable.
Yeah.
He feels comfortable asking me the hard questions. And I just want to make sure that I've done my job up until then.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I feel like so ready for this one. This is going to be like, you and we're part of the problem of people not knowing what to say, because we don't tell them what to say instead, or at least, okay, ready for me. I close up, like I share it with you, I share it with my mom, I share it with Zeke, my sister. I have very few people that I will talk to about my kids. And I think from now on, I'm just going to be a little more brave, you know what I mean? And say, yeah, I have kids. I live here and they live in Texas. I see them 4 times a year. And I understand why I want to be defensive. I get it. Like, I'm a human, and it's a part of me that hurts, right? To the point where if somebody was like, oh, really? Or like, oh, you were a drunk, like, so you lost your kids. And anyway, that's not my responsibility, and that, but to be open and share without blame or without like overly defensive responsibility. And also mine is just the advice. Like, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe I deal with that a little bit more because I must present it in a way that it seems open-ended. I don't feel like I do. I feel like people just want to fix what's going on with me because
Yeah, I think their hearts are in the right place, and maybe because they don't know as much about what, like you said, their hearts are in the right place, but they don't know as much about how much you think about it, how
yeah,
much how much you've agonized over it and had really strong feelings. And, maybe because they don't know that, they just assume that you don't know what, like,
right.
you don't know what to do. And it's like, yes, you do, and you've been dealing with it since the day I met you. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, you're probably right on my side too, is like, I just don't talk about it. I don't talk about it enough with people. And I think that's the first step. I'm not saying I'm going to go out and, like, next time I have my dental hygienist, like, lay it all out on her. I'm just saying,
Right,
like, the
right.
people that I have, you know, contact with on a regular basis, I don't see what the problem is. Like, talking
No.
about
Yeah, I mean, I think it same. It's not like we need to jump out and be like, I think it's just it'll be like an experience for me. And it's one I've been going through. And like also, however strong or however not strong, I'm feeling it in the moment. You know what I mean? Is where I'm willing to go. Um, yeah,
this has been a great
I
conversation.
know. I just love you. I
I love
I I learned a lot. Like,
Me too. Me too.
anyway, I think should we pull one more card?
Yeah, let's pull one more at the end
Well,
because
a universe has your back card.
I like it.
I do want to say to anybody out there who is in a similar situation, where for one reason or another, you are not raising your children, um, you're not alone.
You are not alone.
You're not alone. It doesn't make you a bad
And
person.
we do recover, and it does get better. You know, it changes. There's always going to be feelings associated with it because they're your children. He's my son. Um, but it's like peeling back the layers of an onion, like Sharon says, Miss Sharon says, it's when you're better equipped to handle things, another layer of the onion is peeled,
Yeah.
and it's all in divine timing.
Right. I'm going crazy pulling cards at this desk. Oh my God.
But
All right. I don't know if you can read that. It's pretty faint.
when I focus on my inner light, I see the world through the lens of love. Oh wow, I love that. That's perfect.
Amazing.
Yes, it is.
All right, everybody. If you have any questions or anything like that, or just need a little camaraderie or whatever, just don't give me advice. If you're a pro bono lawyer in Texas who's willing to work for me, my information is below. Um, anyway, peace. Namaste.
Namaste.